Ladies and gentlemen, good day. Hard Times, written by Charles Dickens, a novel, a very interesting novel, and perhaps one of the best written by Charles Dickens, The Hard Times. This is the story of Thomas Gradgrind, a wealthy retired merchant in the industrial city of Coketown, England, devotes his life to a philosophy of rationalism, self-interest, and fact. He raises his oldest children, Lucia and Tom, according to this philosophy, and never allows them to engage in fanciful or imaginative pursuit. He founds a school and charitably takes in one of the students, the kindly and imaginative Sissy Jupe, after the disappearance of her father, a circus entertainer. As the Gradgrind children grow older, Tom becomes dissipated, self-interested, hedonist, and Lucia struggle with deep inner confusion, feeling as though she's missing something important in her life. Eventually, Lucia marries Gradgrind's friend Josiah Bonderby, a wealthy factory owner and a banker more than twice her age. Bonderby continually trumpets his role as a self-made man who was abandoned in the gutter by his mother as an infant. Tom is apprenticed at the Bonderby Bank and Sissy remains at the Gradgrind home to care for the younger children. In the meantime, an improvised hand Dickens term for the lowest labourers in the Coketown's factories named Stephen Blackpool struggle with his love for Rachel, another poor factory worker. He is unable to marry her because he is already married to a horrible drunken woman who disappears for months and even years at a time. Stephen visits Bonderby to ask about a divorce, but learns that only the wealthy can obtain them. Outside Bonderby's home, he meets Mrs. Pickler, a strange old woman with an inexplicable devotion to Bonderby. James Harthouse, a wealthy young sophisticated from London, arrives in Coketown to begin a political career as a disciple of Gradgrind, who is now a member of parliament. He immediately takes an interest in Lucius and decides to try to seduce her. With the unspoken aid of Mrs. Sparsit, a former aristocrat who has fallen on hard times and now works for Bonderby, he sets about trying to corrupt Lucia. The hands exhorted by a corrupt union spokesman named Slackridge try to form a union. Only Stephen refused to join because he feels that a union strike would only increase tension between employers and employee. He is cast out by the other hands and fired by the Bonderby when he refuses to spy on them. Lucia, impressed with Stephen's integrity, visits him before he leaves Coketown and helps him with some money. Tom accompanies her and tells Stephen that if he waits outside the bank for several consecutive nights, help will come to him. Stephen does so, but no help arrives. Eventually, he packs up and leaves Coketown, hoping to find agriculture work in the country. Not long after that, the bank is robbed, and the lone suspect is Stephen, the vanished hand who has now been seen loitering outside the bank for several nights just before disappearing from the city. Mrs. Sparsit witnesses Harthouse declaring his love for Lucia, and Lucia agrees to meet him. In Coketown later that night, however, Lucia instead flees to her father's house, where she miserably confides to Gradgrind that her upbringing has left her married to a man she does not love. Disconnected from her feeling deeply unhappy and possibly in love with Harthouse, she collapses to the floor, and Gradgring, struck dumb with self-reproach, began to realize the imperfections in his philosophy of rational self-interest. Sissy, who loves Lucia deeply, visits Harthouse and convinces him to leave Cocktown forever. Bounderby, furious that his wife has left him, redoubles his efforts to capture Stephen. When Stephen tries to return to clear his good name, he falls into a mining pit called Old Hell Shaft. Rachel and Lucia discover him, but he dies soon after an emotional farewell to Rachel. Gradgring and Lucia realize that Tom is really responsible for robbing the bank, and they arrange to sneak him out of England with the help of curious performer with whom Sissy spent her early childhood. They are nearly successful, but are stopped by Bitzer, a young man who went to Gradgring's school and who embodies all the qualities of the detached rationalism that Gradgring once espoused, but who now sees its limit. Sleary, the leaping circus proprietor, arranged for Tom to slip out of Blitzer's grasp, and the young robber escape from England after all. Mrs. Sparsit, anxious to help Bounderby find the robbers, drags Mrs. Pegler, a known associate of Stephen Blackpool, in to see Bounderby. Thinking Mrs. Pegler is a potential witness, Bounderby recoils, and it is revealed that Mrs. Pegler is really his loving mother, whom he has forbidden to visit him. Bounderby is not a self-made man after all. Angrily, Bounderby fires Mrs. Sparsit and sends her away to a hostile relative. 5 years later, he will die alone in the streets of Cocktown. Gradgring gives up his philosophy of fact and devotes his political power to helping the poor. Tom realizes the error of his ways, but dies without ever seeing his family again. While Sissy marries and has a large and loving family, Lucia never again marries and never has children. Nevertheless, Lucia is loved by Sissy's family and learns at last how to feel sympathy for her fellow human being. So this is the story of The Hard Time, written by Charles Dickens, and the theme of this novel is that it is about the hero and this protagonist of the novel who trained and brought his children according to his own philosophy. The Hard Times suggests that in 19th century England, overzealous adoption of industrialization threatened to turn the human being into machine by thwarting the development of their emotion and imagination. This suggestion comes forth largely through the action of Gradgring and his follower. Bounderby, as the former, educates the young children of his family and his school in the ways of fact. The latter treats the workers in his factory as emotionless objects that are easily exploited for his own self-interest. So this is the opposition between facts and fancy. And this novel we find, while Mr. Gradgring insists that his children should always stick to the fact, Hard Time not only suggests that fancy is an important aspect, but it continually calls into question the difference between the facts and fancy. Dickens suggests that what constitutes so-called fact is a matter of perspective or opinion. For example, Bounderby believes that factory employees are lazy, good for nothing, who expect to feed from a golden spoon. The Hand, in contrast, see them hardworking as fairly exploited. As a novelist, Dickens is naturally interested in illustrating that fiction cannot be excluded from the fact-filled the importance of femininity. During the Victorian era, women are commonly associated. Victorian times, women are associated with supposedly feminine traits like compassion, moral purity, and emotional sensitivity. Hard times suggest that because they possess these traits, women can counteract the mechanization effects of industrialization. For instance, when Stephen feels depressed about the monotony of his life in a factory worker, Rachel's gentle fortitude inspires him to keep going. He sums up her virtue by referring to her as a guiding angel. Similarly, Sissy introduced love into the Gradgring household. So this is the facts involved, the theme involved in this novel, that Hard Times by Charles Dickens. And Dickens, as you see in his other novel like Oliver Twist, Great Expectation, and many other his novel like, he portrays his time of the England of that time, the newly industrial age, and the Victorian, the colliding of these two facts of Victorian age with the industrial age, which dashes the old fancy and dreams of their people. So this is the Hard Times written on the context of that newly industrial era of England. I hope you will enjoy. Thank you very much.